Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to episode 161B of Tales with TR. I'm your host, Terry Ryan, reminding you that we can now be found on YouTube. Go to THPN, the Hockey Podcast Network, and just look it up, Tales with TR. We've been on for about 2 months and going pretty strong. And today, let's get right into it. My guest, former first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens, 94, 330 games in the National Hockey League, now lives in Ottawa, coaches hockey, raising a family. My good friend, Brad Brown. Brad, how you doing?
What's up, TR? I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. So you're 15 years now out of the game. You retired 2008, 2009 after a successful hockey career, to say the least. And now you're coaching. Do you find you got a couple of sons in hockey, right? You got 3 kids overall, and 2 of them are playing hockey?
Yep, I got a 20-year-old who's playing junior A for the Smith Falls Bears.
Yeah.
And then I 11, or actually turning 12 next week. I have a 12-year-old who plays hockey. So I have a whole nother cycle of hockey, of all the tournaments and everything.
Do you
but,
ever?
But you know what? We love it. It keeps you young. Hockey, sports keeps you young, going to the rinks. And I find now, as you get older, here me in Ottawa, most of my friends are hockey parents. Like that's my group, because we're together, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
We're always going on tournaments, so it's a good time.
So when you say you coach, I know you do hockey schools. Do you also coach the I don't know how you do it, club teams, travel teams? How do you do it there?
I just do defense camps. Defense camps. And during the year, I do sessions in the mornings before school, but I don't coach my kids. Like, I rather go to the rink with a coffee in my hand and talk to the other parents and cheer on the kids and keep everyone cool and relaxed in the rink. That's the way I am.
I'm the same
I
way,
let
buddy.
coaches coach, and I don't say a word to the coaching staff ever. I let the coaches coach. I'm a big believer. It's up to the kids. The kids got to figure it out. You have some guys who are always, chirping their coach or sending emails. I don't say a word. I just sit back and I cheer on my own kids and let them figure it out.
That's a great attitude. I'm the same way. I didn't know what I would be like as a parent. Like, you never really know until you're in the sit, but I'm the same way, Brownie. I'm like, unless there's some problem, there never has been so far, like a problem outside of the actual game or something, but never, ever, ever. I like going to watch, and, I've come to realize there's so much. Politics is one thing. Politics is going to exist in sports. I mean, it's the way it goes, but not the ref isn't always out to get you. The coach isn't always out to fuck over your kid. It's just you can look at these things either like defensive and cynical, or just open your mind, let things go. The kid's going to grow up one way or the other, and he or she is going to, unless they have some coach that's really trying to put them down, and that's not usually the case, right?
Exactly. And and I always tell people, like, I tell parents, like, nothing you say to little Johnny in the car after the game is going to make him a better player.
Nothing.
It's going to put him over the top.
Yeah.
You can talk about maybe trying hard, like just try hard. It could be a good player that way. But if you start talking about details of the game, like, nothing you say is going to make your kid a better player.
Especially right after.
Right after too. And
I try to say nothing within an hour at least, and even then, I swear to you, I'm not. If Penny Lane asks me something and I can help her, fine. Even if I see something's going on, I'll be like, well, just try to be nice about it, but never like, you should have done that. Never, ever, ever. I almost feel bad doing that. I don't, but some parents, I guess, want to take control, right? Maybe we got it out of our system, Brownie, because we played pro. I think a lot of parents are almost living through the kid. I'm just guessing, but I don't know.
Yes, yeah, some are, but some just, we've been through it all, right? Because we've been through, like, me and you were. I know you were you were like, you were the man from Newfoundland, right? You're like you're the big fish in the small pond.
Yeah,
you've seen it all. You've seen all the after game, jealous parents or whatever, always trying to attack Terry Ryan because so it all. So now you have that experience to pass it on to your, to
no, you've got it. I mean, you live and you learn. Our our experience and our personality, our whole selves, it's always changing. You're always learning. But I think there's so much good in sports that, it's an experience. And where we got right to the top, I think that we have a little advantage seeing what we're like. You don't get there by being cynical, lazy, um, uninspired, unfocused. All those things, if you are, which we were,
Yeah.
and you end up seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly in not only the game, but I think sports in general. So it's much easier to lend advice, not so much coach, but for sure advice for that's at least what I found. Even Brownie, when it comes down to billets, these kids here are moving away. It's a big thing, right? Like to move away. And that's the
Mhm.
first thing I tell the parents here. I'm like, well, first of all, get a good billet because that's where he's going to be or she for the entire year. That's number one. Where before we start talking about breakouts or like power plays or Michigans, we got to, you know what I mean? There's so much that goes into it. And by the way, because you were in North Bay for 4 years, right? In
Yeah.
junior. How did that
Yeah.
experience go with your billets? I never asked you that.
It went well. I had two great families there. I had no problems. I'm I'm low maintenance, I'm very low maintenance,
I
and
bet, yeah.
I just no, they were good, and I still keep in touch with them here and there.
Speaking of, I never looked at your team list.
Mhm.
Well, I must have back in the day, Brownie, but we didn't really have. I got all my knowledge from the hockey news, and I
Yeah,
forgot. I'm just going to mention a guy that I've never mentioned, and he's passed away now. I noticed him in the minors, and he was a fantastic player. I used to go, how did this guy not get further? And he played with you, John Spoltor,
yeah. John Spolter, he was unbelievable. Yeah.
wasn't he?
Well, you just look at his stats. You go on Hockey DB and see his stats. Like he was a wizard out there. He was like a little Wayne Gretzky. I was
Yeah,
15, 16. It was my underage year. He was a 20-year-old, and he just dominated the OHL. But back then, it was all about size and his, his not
well, he looked.
was slow, but he was a genius on the ice, and he was a great guy too. I remember him. He always liked to, like, some 20-year-olds in junior don't talk to the young guys,
Yeah,
but he always came around, and I remember this as a 16-year-old kid coming after a game. Hey, Brownie, what's up? How you feeling? And he always had the door open for me to talk to him, and he always had a beer. Like after a game, he was 20-year-old.
yeah.
We're at Kelsey's. He always had a beer. He's like, Brownie, you can't have this beer. This is my beer, right? But he's a good guy. And unfortunately, he passed away from cancer
Cancer. Yeah,
too
yeah.
early.
It really shook me. I
Uh,
remember that happening, and I kind of forgot about it.
I
But he was
remember
real
hearing
good. I remember
yeah.
playing. What's that?
He had one story where he was playing in the East Coast League, and he got called up to Providence in the AHL. And I think he was like top three in scoring in the playoffs and won a Calder Cup in the AHL.
And
And
then
then
back.
knowing Johnny's like, you know what? I'm done with that. I'm going back to the coast or wherever he was playing, somewhere south. To
Well,
have a good time, because that's the guy
when
he
I
was.
played against him, Brown, he was playing in San Diego, getting all kinds of money under the table. I'm thinking the best players down in those places. Like on my team, I played in where did I play in the coast? Colorado Springs, Boise, Idaho. That was great. Cincinnati and Orlando, and there was guys, at least three on each team that were making far more than they
Yeah,
would have been. Well, than I was making in the A. We made good money. I think it was 67 US, right? I was making almost 100 Canadian. But what would happen down there, the boys would get their down payment on a place, right?
yeah,
Because they pay for your rent and those. So they give them 10 or 15 grand a down payment. Now we'll pay for your mortgage, not your rent. We're going to pay for your mortgage, and we'll
yeah,
give you 1,000 on the cap, 1,000 under the cap, right? Being, for those that don't know, there's a weekly salary cap that you had to come in under. So you could, that was my deal. Give me $1,000 a week. Now give me 1,000 cash, pay for my groceries, pay for my gas. It was almost the same as I was making up there. And for a lot of
yeah,
people, it was more.
yeah,
Mm. And Spoltor, by the way, was a phenomenal player. And I noticed it the first time I ever played against him. And we went out to a bar. I think it was called Chilcoots in San Diego, I think. And anyway, we had a great night. I'm glad that that happened before he passed. But yeah, I didn't realize that you played with him. Um, and speaking of, so you go from Mississauga to
mhm,
North Bay, which is small town. I guess not tiny town, but it's definitely remote town, Canada. City, but still, you know what I mean. It's a little bit isolated,
Yeah, yeah,
especially in the OHL where most teams are a hop, skip, and a jump, right? You can go a half hour and go to like, unlike the WHL or
yeah.
North Bay, you'd be on Kitchener Rangers. You don't have to go 2 hours for most of your road trips. So, how was that experience? Like the city of North Bay itself,
Mhm.
and to be there for 3 to 4 years with a nucleus of players that you went through that together. I mean, was it humbling? Was it different moving away from home? Were you homesick, or was it a nice, refreshing break from big city life?
No, you know what? I liked it. Like I love the northern cities. Like I love the that feel of Thursday night, Sunday night home games where it means something. You can
Yeah,
play a lot of OHL cities where, like in Mississauga, for instance, like not a lot of fans there, and it's such a
yeah,
big city, and the Leafs suck up all the attention for hockey. When you go up north to the Sioux or North Bay or Sudbury, like it's your show, and I like that feeling of going to a
yeah.
town where we were the main attraction, and so I enjoy it. I will never change that, for anything.
We shoot Shoresy, as you know, up in Sudbury, and it's a different
Yeah,
flavor. It reminded me of going into like Prince Albert, or
yeah,
like I've been to lots of OHL games. I hadn't been to any up around there. It was all of them were in and around Toronto. Whenever I was there, now let's go see a game. Probably
yeah,
been a couple of dozen over my lifetime, but never North Bay or Sudbury. And it was totally different up in Sudbury. It was like, game day. Everybody kind of felt it. The
yeah.
rink filled up, especially during the playoffs. We watched their playoff run against Peterborough. I gotta say, it really reminded me of the what I loved about junior hockey. There is something to be said for that. And Brownie, I never realized this till I glanced today. Big year, 94, 95, man. 64 games, 8 goals, 38 assists, 46 points, 172 minutes. I forgot that I don't want to say forgot. You were a stay at home defenseman. I know you were real tough, and often that lasts the test of time on YouTube and everything else. But I say to people, there was no defenseman in that era that you couldn't play defense and be so don't use the word goon or like tough guy, quote unquote, when you're talking about these D, because you actually had to play the game. But I
Yeah.
forgot that you had that offensive awareness because you never really played on the power play in Freddie. So when you were playing there, when you were going into pro, was that your aspiration to be an offensive guy, or did you know that, you know what, I'm probably in the NHL going to be a stay-at-home guy that use my strengths in the corners, drop the mitts the odd time, or were you thinking, I might get 50 points up top?
No, at the time I was like you, Terry. I had no friggin' clue, right? What I was gonna be. I wasn't like the kids now. They know, and
Yeah,
they have a vision.
yeah,
Got skills coaches, and they're getting. I had no clue. I just know when I played in North Bay that year, and as everyone knows, any hockey player knows, if a coach likes you, you're in a good spot, right? And I had a
yeah,
coach, Bert Templeton, who coached me, and he loved me, and I loved him. He was great to me. But I played power play. Every time there's a power play, Brownie, you're up. Like that
yeah.
helps. If you don't play power play, you don't get any points, especially for me, for my
A
like a
D
big
man for
rugged
sure.
defenseman. But I'm out there in the power play. I move the puck once to my partner. He shoots, scores. I get an assist. That is
Yeah.
because you're on the power play.
So
If
this is unrelated, but do you follow like the NHL now at all? Like, do you?
yeah, I'm like a fan. Like living in
Okay.
Ottawa now, I follow Ottawa, and I always like Toronto because I grew up in Mississauga, so I'm always a Leaf fan too. But
Okay.
I'm
And
like, yeah, but I'm not like I don't study the game, but I watch all the highlights every night or morning when I wake up. But
well, it's funny because so I'm just thinking of certain guys in certain situations because it's not always this static or like, say right now Willie Nylander is waiting for a contract. I think he
yeah,
wants 9 or 10, and you'd think it's a little high when Timo Meyer is similar, but just went, I think, to Jersey for 7 point whatever. There's a couple of it. So anyway, there's always these nuances, but no one's the same player. But I
yeah,
look at Evan Bouchard out in, he's a right-hand shooting defenseman out in Edmonton. And his
yeah,
first, I mean, he struggled for a bit. If you want to call that struggling, I think he was a first round pick, World Junior. I just covered the Oilers last year a lot with Ryan Rishaug and Jason Strudwick. So
Okay.
I watched all the games.
Mhm.
And when Tyson Barrie got traded and he jumped into that first power play slot, right hand, he really blossomed, I thought. I mean, he was a different player at the end. Now he's up for contract, I think now. Well, he's got this year, just like Matthews and Nylander say, but he's up.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because he's he's playing with McDavid and Draisaitl. So just being there, just being on that power play, which is the deadliest in like 35 years. It's one of
Yeah.
the biggest. So he might get 65 assists,
Yeah.
right? And he's pretty good. Now I don't know that he would do whatever he's going to fucking do now with Columbus. Maybe, but maybe not. But sometimes, but this might be worth an extra like fucking 3-4 million a year to the
That's why
guy.
that's why the last month.
What's
No,
that?
they're good. That's why you see players who are UFAs. They might take a 1 year deal to go to Edmonton for a year to get their
Yeah,
stats up, and then they're going to re-sign the following year. Like
exactly
that's how
where
good
I was
McDavid and
going. I
Draisaitl are.
was,
Yeah,
yes, I was thinking like if you're using the same logic, if you got like, if you can, you're right there, you're a free agent and someone wants you for a year or two, why not pick that situation where I mean, if you're on Edmonton, you're going to make 15 breakout passes a year and you're going to get assists on all of them. Like, like,
exactly.
or I mean, you're going to make a lot of breakout passes. You'll end up getting 15 assists.
Yeah,
Look at the legends that you played with, dude. I looked at your teams. I was always a big supporter. So I always knew your stats. I knew where you played. But as time goes by, you forget these names that were just, you know, everyday guys that
yeah,
everybody spoke about, water cooler talk, and now they're kind of fading. But Chicago, say, one
yeah,
year, Probert, Amante, Jamnoff, Gilmore, Chelios, Olchik, Manson, and
yeah,
I've just started. You're coming in as a rookie. These 2 years later, Rangers, Leach, Nedved, Fleury, Messier, Graves, Richter, Kirk McLean, like Brownie,
mhm.
were these guys like these are legends within the game, right? Legends. Were, was that intimidating, or were these? I'm guessing like you're in a room with like Chelios, Gilmore. I mean, who takes the stage? Who's the alpha
Yeah,
male?
yeah, yeah.
Messier, Leach, Nedved, Fleury, Richter, Graves. So were these
Yeah.
guys? Were there egos like, or did I mean there got to be egos? Did they all work together? Was it an intimidating experience or a learned experience? Did you learn every day, or were you intimidated? I guess.
Uh, a bit of both, you know. I'm kind of a like when I was younger, going into a room with all the superstars, I was a bit quiet and shy. Like I wasn't myself. I stayed. I looked for those other fifth, sixth defensemen
Yeah.
out dinner tonight, and all the big boys are going to like high end places, and all. Hey, where you guys going? Like the guys in my salary base, where you guys going? Now let's go to Ponderosa or whatever, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I never fit in with the stars. But I was they're all friends. We're all buddies, but I never really like I can't say, oh yeah, me and Messi are buddies or me and Leach are buddies because I never when I was in New York, it was kind of weird. You had all the guys like back then I was making like lowest guy in the team salary. So all the boys are living in New York City or somewhere for 10, 12 grand a month. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm not going, I can't afford that. I'm going
Yeah.
somewhere to look at house.
Hey.
So, but I enjoyed it. Like I always say, like Messier was like, he's everything you always heard about Messier, being a good guy, being a leader. When I was there in New York, he came in from Vancouver, I think. It was Sather's first year back in New York, and he got a contract. Like obviously he wasn't the same player that we saw growing up as a kid, like just
Yeah.
an animal killer, one to like no one fuck with him, like whatever. Like he was, I'm gonna say 37 years old, probably.
Yeah.
He was older, so and the team was terrible. Like it was a bad constructed team, so we lost a lot. But he was never an asshole. He was never down. He was always positive.
I rem.
Was that favorite player you ever played with, or best player you played with? And I would say the best player I ever played with. Obviously, I played with Messier, Hall of Famer, but he wasn't in his prime. But the best player I played with in his prime was Fleury in New York. So that 1 year in New York, there, if you look at Fleury's stats, he only had, I think he only played 60 games that year because he got suspended the last 20 games a year because he was, like had a drug problem, so he couldn't
Yeah.
do any drugs. He was always getting tested for drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
And I think it's in his book, but that year he was feisty. He can score. He was a playmaker. But I remember here's my last time with Theron Fleury. He was kicking ass all year. It was him and Sandy McCarthy living together, rooming
Yeah.
together because they both had problems. But I remember I want to say Phoenix, and Theo was first in the league in scoring. I
I
think
remember that.
he was first in the league in scoring.
Yeah.
And I always loved Theo. He's a good guy, but I was never close with him on the team.
Yeah.
But he was at a bar in Phoenix, and we look over, and he was doing shots. He was doing shooters. And we're like, what the is Theo doing? Right?
Yeah.
Now, in that year, I had no idea because I wasn't in his little circle of friends and on the team. But anyways, and that night in Phoenix, or I think it's Phoenix, but he went off the wagon, and that was it. He was done, and that was the last time I saw Theo. And but he was the best player I ever played with. Like for his prime was Theo and Tony Amonte were the two guys that when I was with them, they were like at the top of their game, and they were fun to watch.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember Theo leading the league in scoring, and then having to. I didn't realize it was suspension. Whatever it was, I knew it was drug related. Yeah, yeah. He was. That's a good story, and at least it's a good reminder because Theo's so political now that people free just take all that away, whether you agree or not, whatever. Just take it all away. Take that guy's out of it altogether. Take that mask off. And if you look at Theo Fleury as a hockey player, man, I, in that era too, it wasn't easy to be small and get out there, and because he was gritty, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like he'd fucking stick you too. He worked for his room out there.
Yeah.
He was great. Well, I mean, that's why he was on Team Canada. I believe they won an Olympic, right?
Yeah.
New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use promo code THPN. Bet just $5 to score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. In West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly in partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10 plus leg required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/baseball terms.
Bob Probert. I mean, I met him once, Brownie, and he seemed like a great, great guy, great person. I've heard only good things. What was it like to be in a locker room with a legend like that? He's one of my favorite people ever.
He was a legend. He was probably one of the biggest guys. When I first met him, I was in awe because think about him when we were growing up playing in junior.
Yeah.
Like the name Bob Probert, like there's no one other than like Bob Probert was the man.
He was the man. I try to tell people, I'm like, is this really a debate? People now, like, that are like, I played senior hockey with, say, a couple of years ago, and they look back and they put all these guys in, and I'm going, wait, but Probert was the, he's number one, right? Like, I mean, let's just, oh, really, was he? But I'd put, Sandy McCarthy, and then there was Tony Twist, and I'm like, all really, really, really tough guys, right? And Domi and fucking, you can go down the list. Everybody, Manson, we talked to Rob Ray, we can go right down it. I'm taking nothing away from any of those guys. Each team had 2 or 3 back then, but I think even the guys I just mentioned, I think everybody, I mean, why would they go at him like that? Why was Domi so pumped to fight him? He was number one, right? I mean, with a bullet. I didn't remember that wrong. I think anybody from our era would say the same, right?
Yeah. And then you know what? And he's the greatest guy off the ice. And my thing with Proby, I always remember is Proby loved O'Doul's, non-alcoholic beers. He liked to have a beer with the boys. and just have a good time. But I with playing with Proby for 2 years, I just remember like we're going on the road or going somewhere, and the next up and coming tough guy always wanted to fight Proby.
Always.
And I'm like, Proby, don't fight tonight. He was probably 35 when I was like 35. Like people don't realize when you're 35 years old and you're still fighting the league and you're fighting a 22-year-old, it's not the same. Because
No.
I always say like any player, let's say a 22-year-old wants to fight Proby one night and Proby's 35. And I'm like, listen, Proby would beat the shit out of you if he was 22 years old.
Yeah,
Like it's like
totally.
so, all the guys always wanted to fight him, and he always obliged. He always gave those guys a chance to fight him. And you know what, he he probably won 8 out of 10 times still at 35 years old.
Yeah, man.
He's a great fighter, and he was just and like you said, in his prime, he scored 30 goals one year.
Scored 30 goals, was an NHL All-Star.
Like,
I've
he
often
was a
said,
player.
see, to me, that's when the game, unfortunately for us, who were spunky guys that could play. I mean, but we're first round picks. I try to say to the people, I'm like, you look at the bulk of fighting in those years I was in the A. A lot of people now, they're tuned into Shoresy or Chicklets. They want to go back and see my history and who I played with.
Yeah.
I'm like, me, Brownie, like Aaron Asham, like we were big picks. Like, we happened to be able to drop the gloves, and we really cut our teeth early in the A. But we really, like, we weren't drafted because we could fight. That just was a kind of result of the situation that we were in. But when I have this conversation with my dad, because he'll say, in the 70s, it was pretty crazy. There was a lot of brawls and things, but it was, like Terry O'Reilly could play, Stan Jonathan, I don't know, Larry Robinson. I'm thinking of the tough guys. Even David the Hammer Schultz had 25 one year. Chris Nyland had 20. Like, but then all of a sudden in the late 80s, to contend with Probert, then all of a sudden the guys getting one shift a game come in, right? Then all of a sudden you're looking over at Tony Twist going, okay, this guy's either on the juice or like works out 15 hours a fucking day, one or the other, but he's bigger than me. He's going to eat me. Now I can't skate that well. If it's one-on-ones, I'll be pumped, but it's not one-on-ones. I'm out there and this guy's going to fucking put my orbital bone in the back of my fucking throat. And it started to become, so in our era specifically, almost to the fucking day, there was guys getting the one shift to go out, and I hate to use the word goon, because even then you had to have balance. You can't play in the NHL without balance if you're fighting, right? They all got balance, which means most of them, Darren Langdon got one shift a game. He ripped up minor hockey. But a lot of them, like, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, your job was to get tapped and go out once a game, and it was never around, and it's not around now. It existed in the years that we played, and we were the kind of guys that would answer the bell, so we had to fight all of them, and it was
quick question for you. I remember when I was playing in the minors, it was my second year, you were in the NHL, you made the team that year, but you were hurt. Okay, and I remember that I got called up, and I was just on a tear in the minors. I probably had about 15 fights in the first 2 months. You
had 108 penalty minutes in the first 8 games. I'll never forget that.
Okay. Well, anyways, I got called up to Montreal, and I went to your house. Okay. It was Tucker was there.
Yeah.
And Chris Murray was there. Chris Murray was up with the big club. So I get there, like, hey boys, I'm pumped up. I'm called up to the NHL. And I felt tough. He's watching, because we were playing St. Louis the next night. I got called up for that game. He's watching Tony Twist tapes on the VHS, and I'm like, I had no idea who Tony Twist was, but I'm watching tapes of Tony Twist, just fucking killing guys, like in the WHL and the AHL, all those old fights. I'm watching this, I'm like, holy God, that guy's tough. And Chris is like, yeah, I'm going to study him, so I'm probably going to fight him tomorrow night. Okay,
and
what happens? Who fights him the next night?
Oh God,
not Chris. I did. I was so pissed off because I was like a Mike Tyson opponent back in the day. Like I was defeated before the fight even happened, because I'm like,
how did that go? He was the one person, course. Literally, he pulled me aside and he goes, all that stuff. And he goes, like these guys got big punches. Like Domi could have put you out. He goes, don't fight Tony Twist, Terry. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like he really was serious. He grabbed me and like shook me. Don't do it. It's not going to be funny. It's not a novelty. We love you, but don't do it. Now you did it.
I know. And I did it, and it was like I haven't fought yet. Like I had a really bad start to my career for fighting in the NHL. I had 2 bad losses. So I fought Rob Ray too, and he pounded me. But I had no confidence. So all night long, I'm thinking about Tony freaking Twist all night long because Chris Murray's watching tapes of him all night long. And then, so Tony must have saw my stats. Like he's a professional. He saw this young kid coming up with 108 PIMs and whatever.
Yeah.
So his first shift, he came after me.
Right off the bat, and you're
Right
on the
after
menu
that,
just because you got penalty minutes.
And he came after me, and I'm already like scared because I watched an hour and a half of him killing guys. But if you watch the fight on YouTube, he grabbed me and I tripped on my stick right away. I fell. And then he was throwing these haymakers. He didn't hit me. He missed me, thank God. But I fell down right away. And we go to the box and I look over and he has his stuff off and he's jacked. He's probably about 250, just jacked. I remember Darcy Tucker comes up to me. He's like, Brownie, don't fight him ever again. That's what he told me. Brown, leave him alone. Like, I didn't go after him. He came after me, Tux. And thanks for watching those tapes last night and got me all freaking freaked out.
I know. And Murr was like slight. Like he used to have these great fights. I recommend to people listening, watch Chris Murray, Steve McLaren at the 94 Memorial Cup.
Yeah, I was there. I was on the team.
Yeah, you were, Brownie. I mean, they could there's another guy.
Chris Murray was so tough. Tough.
He was so tough, man. And I remember being on there and he fought Jeff Odgers and he broke his hand, but they were going, and Odgers could really go. And Murr was such a nice guy. And I remember him doing that too. I'd never seen anybody do that before. Sit there and watch. I don't want to do that. I don't want to watch the night before someone that's like it just gives me too much anxiety. Fuck exactly. That. Yeah, right.
I like to go in the AHL, my first in the AHL, I didn't know when I just fought. I didn't know who anyone was or what they did. I just did it. And I
didn't want to know.
Then afterwards, I'm like, wow, that guy was pretty tough. I saw his stats. Oh, Christoph Oliwell, yeah, he's fighting a lot this year.
Yeah, I know.
I like just going at it, like because I wasn't a killer, but I would fight anyone at any time, and I would win some, lose some. But I think I had balls to do it. But I like you too. Like I can go on a streak where I go to tough guys, and then go 0-3 and lose to some lower guys, like smaller guys. Just that's the way how I fought.
Well, you were legit. You were legit. I was a middleweight fighting up. I think you could.
Yeah, you were nuts, Terry. You you didn't hold on like Langdon. You just went toe to toe. You just wanted to put on a show, or you just wanted to get it over with. And
yeah, well, I think early on when you start doing it, you figure it out. Like I was kind of, when I was playing junior, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was kind of, I remember, it's weird. Yeah. A lot of it I don't remember. For years, I don't remember a lot that I was thinking, but I remember thinking specifically. I remember really thinking about like, how am I going to do? Like if I get punched in the face, and I learned I could take a punch. And I think that gives you not an advantage, but if you know yourself and you're not scared to take one, and I knew myself. And so now I'm like, I might have a bit of an advantage because not everybody thinks like that. And he might be tough, but I don't know if he wants to take, because I'm going to give you 10, right? Like they might not be as powerful as your one, but I'm just going to keep coming. And a lot of people didn't like that. And when you learn, you know, Brownie, you were kind of a mix of both, because you were fighting. I remember like I would fight up, but you were almost for a while in Freddie, and like you were expected to fight Peter Worrell and George Laraque, right? Like, and I don't know, Mark Major and Ryan Vandenbush, you were kind of expected to. It was a little bit with me, but where you were a little bit bigger and had more penalty minutes and dealt with those guys like you, and you could deal with it, Brownie. I mean, I was fighting not to lose. I learned how to not lose. I knew I wasn't going to put these guys down though, but you could put them down if you hit them, and you had to get used to that, right?
Yeah. Watching you, you're tough. You want to put on a show for the boys, like, and you want to, like, sometimes when when you weren't playing much, you just wanted to fit. You wanted to be part of the team, and you want to help out. That's
exactly.
Like if you played a game in Montreal where you had 2 shifts that game, like, and
definitely fighting.
You're like, you want to do something, right? But
I want to have a meal after at courses. I want to have a meal and a wine and whatever it was, beers, most part. I didn't know much about, but I want to have that and feel like I earned it and be able to like talk with the boys. If I don't do anything, I don't even feel like part of the team, right? But that's another thing. That's our mentality. And you know who does that a lot? If you'll ever notice, Milan Lucic, as soon as he goes, he fights like first game or two, like he always, and I've heard him speak about that. And he's like, it goes right back to junior. I just felt like I wanted to contribute in some way and I could do that. And it does, though, sometimes take the weight off your shoulders, right? I mean, back then. Now I think it would be going out and just playing a gritty game. And now you'd be more, you'd know what you were doing. No one even told us. Think about it, Brownie. 2 first-round picks in a row. You had my first year in the A, the year before I missed a lot with a concussion. First year in the A, 34 fights. Like, no one was monitoring. Hey, you want to be no one told me this is what we want to do. We want you to go 2-way, and then we're going to use you on the third line, and then maybe on the power play. Or like, it was just like we were going in blind. I'm not complaining about the organization as much as the era, maybe.
The thing is, it's changing now, right? It's changing. The game's changing. Like I always say, like it is kind of barbaric. Like in the 70s, 80s,
totally,
90s, especially in the minors. Like people think there's tough guys in the NHL, but you think back in the minors, how many tough guys there were who had to
they're
fight
all coming through, man.
Bare knuckle. Like, what other sport in the world fights bare knuckle? Bare knuckle.
None.
Punching.
And we came through, and you're just knowing, like. I think like people say hockey's in a bad, but I'm like, it's not too far. Like, and I get it. I love old school hockey, but like traditionalists will say, well, you got the fighting gone. I'm like, I don't know. There was 313 fights last year, dude. Like in a sport, like, so it's kind of like, I remember kind of being, I know I'm rambling, but I remember kind of being offended. I don't want to name guys out, but I remember talking to Jerome McGinley and Shane Doan at the draft going like, we can fight guys. Why do you need someone to get one shift? Like I get it. Those guys were great in the room for the era. I get it. But you can have tough players and you can still have fighting without having this one person that is looking at me like a human meatball before the game, All
the teams now, all the top teams on the show who win, they're tough.
Yeah.
They got grit. It's like, look at the best football teams. They have the best defense. They're tough. They're mean. Fighting, but you got to be tough. You got to have balls now to play.
Exactly. And Brownie, no, you still got to have balls. I say to people, I'm like, the game I'm watching, you guys say it's not tough, but the game I'm watching, whoever wins each year, let's just say defense. Let's just say the defense. If I'm a forward, honestly, Brownie, I didn't give a fuck about fighting. That's the truth. I would be more intimidated, isn't the word, but consciously aware that I'm playing against I'm a forward. I'm supposed to score, and the smallest D over there is 6'3". That's what I would be like, okay, because how am I going to get to the net? That would pose problems in my head as an attacker. Not so much who's going to fucking fight me. Whatever. That might happen.
Like when it's a 2-2 game, when back in our days, 2-2 in the third, there is no more fights in the last 5 minutes because it's a game now.
Yeah.
But it's who gets to the net, who gets that rebound, who battles, who doesn't turn away.
Who doesn't turn away? Who wants to go there? It's still a hard place to go. I don't give a fuck what you say, man.
And when there's a scrum and there's a whistle, who's looking away? Who's looking away, or who's standing there saying "F you"? I want more, right? Like it's like as we know, as we played, we can go through rosters when we're younger. We know who the pretenders were, right?
Yeah.
You just know, you can just smell it out, and who the real guys are. And the real guys are usually tough boys who want to play hockey.
Yeah.
And play it the right way. That's why today's game, I love it. They're all like all the guys on the third, fourth line. They're getting bigger now. They're getting bigger.
Yeah.
The bigger and fast, and they can hit. And it's changing for the better.
I think we're getting to a happy medium. We are. Yeah. Right? Like I hopefully Ryan Reeves doesn't have to fight much this year. But I mean, he's there. Matthews and Marner are out there. I guess they got him for those guys. And I'm like, he might fight less, but he can actually play, though. This isn't someone that gets one shift. I mean, if I'm out there and Ryan Reeves is coming, that's going to hurt, right? He's a good forechecker. I think that's kind of where it went, and I'm fine with that. I totally am. I don't think people panic. I don't think the rough stuff is going to, whatever you want to call that, scrums, fights, hits, it's all going to still be around. Like I said, there's still hundreds of fights. We're not talking 10. We're talking hundreds of fights, more than any other sport. And there's still a level of respect to it. It's still hockey. Brownie, I got to take off. I'm going to skate. at noon, and it was great talking to you again. Do you have anything to plug or promote?
Zero, zero. Just
Okay.
you have a great day, Terry. I can't believe how old are you now? You're 30. I'm 37. You're 36.
Yeah, there you go.
And
36.
and you're still playing for the men's ball
Uh,
hockey team
I
championship,
got the World Championships in a
world
month from
championship.
now. Nationals are in 3 weeks with Newfoundland, and Worlds with
That's
Canada in a month.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable. There's no friggin' way I can be running down court now
You
at a
never
high
know till you
level.
try, Brownie. You never know till you
Unbelievable.
try.
You're the man. You're the man, bud.
Okay. Love you,
Okay,
brother. We'll talk again soon.
okay, take care.
And there you have it, folks. The one, the only, Double B, Brad Brown. One of my real good buddies, like I said, back-to-back first-round picks in Montreal. And in the midst of it all, the people who drafted us got fired. The people before us, being Jacques Demers, I guess, and Serge Savard, not I guess, that's who's the coach and GM, were picking, they were going for size, power, kind of a different era of Canadiens hockey. They picked guys from the Western League like Turner Stevenson, David Wilkie, myself, Darcy Tucker, Aaron Asham, Brad Brown. You see where I'm going with that, right? And of course, there was the odd Saku Koivu thrown in and Valerie Bure because they're fantastic players. But I'm just saying that Montreal, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96 even, they started to want to get bigger, tougher, maybe play with a little bit more spunk. Okay. And when Patrick Waugh famously snapped and I'd just been drafted and left the bench for good reason. I won't get into that. Everybody, they cleaned house, and the people that came in, I don't think we were as highly coveted on their list as the people that drafted us. So I'm certainly not throwing blame or anything like that. Whatever. They're entitled to their opinion. And who knows, maybe they were right, but it left us all, I don't think they were, but maybe they were. It left us all kind of in a bit of a limbo situation, and all of our careers didn't seem as positively solid as they were right before that. So, we experienced all that together. And to be a flailing first round pick in Montreal at the time wasn't particularly, I shouldn't say flailing really either, because I mean, God, yeah, I mean, we had good camps. We did what was asked. I had a rookie of the year in the minors. Brownie, I mean, talks a lot about fighting, but he was real solid, and a lot of teams wanted to trade for him. I remember it wasn't like it was a terrible experience. Really, it wasn't. We learned a lot, but it was great that we had each other. And I don't just mean Brad and I mean everybody I just mentioned, and then Gordy Dwyer and Darcy Harrison, on down the list. I mean, some of those guys that I played with are going to be my friends for life. Um, the point wasn't really a complaint about the situation. The point is that all of that brought Brad and I and a bunch of us that were going through that were in transition from junior to pro and had this expectation as an NHL player and making that transition from the A to the N and all of that, and then eventually having to leave the game. And Brownie played 5 years in the minors, East Coast League included, after the NHL. So it was a unique path. I didn't really get into that with him, but anyway, there's a lot to absorb. It's just not what you see on paper. It's not what you see on the stat sheet. Well, I love what a lot of what stood out to Brownie there was off ice stuff. He explained a lot of on ice, but we were kids growing up. You have to realize that. And hockey was the environment, and we were working hard towards it. But, these are like the guys I mentioned that he played with. These are legends of the game. Not every accountant gets to work with the fucking best in the world all the time. Not every novelist gets to, write with George Orwell and I don't know, fucking Stephen King. Pick your poison. But in hockey, it's just this. In sports, I guess, can't speak for the other sports, but it's the same. seems that way, that you can just play with some of the best in the world, your idols, work with, play with, party with, train with, live with, all of the above. It can be overwhelming at times, but can also be something that you remember for life, and it shapes kind of who you are. Those experiences shape who you are. We wouldn't have done it if we didn't like it. And hockey, like I said, still obviously pays off for us both. Obvious reasons with me, everything I do. And like you said, you just heard Brown. He's a coach, runs his hockey schools, and lives in Ottawa, still very much involved in the game. So thanks a lot, Brad Brown. And folks, we'll be back in just a few days. If you're downtown St. John's right now, get over to Greensleeves, get over to TJ's Pub, Rob Roy, Martini Bar, Bull and Barrel, and Trinity Pub. That's where I like to hang out. But check it all out if you're in St. John's, Newfoundland. Just a great downtown area we have. It's thriving right now with some great weather. If you're going to go for a bite to eat, why not do it at Blue on Water, Merchant Tavern, or Wedgwood Cafe? If you want to work out and change your attitude, change your life, strength and balance for the body and mind, Ryan Power Conditioning on Rope Walk Lane. If you want to go to Mr. Lube, there's 2 locations, one on Kenmount Road, one on Torbay Road. Live, laugh, lube. Folks, every single day as an aging athlete, I use Pitbull Pain Relief Sticks. They're incredible. Go to pitbullpainrelief.com now to check it out and see what all the fuss is about. Pitbull Pain Relief, the pain sticks that just don't quit. True Hockey, take what's yours. I'm about to use my True Stick at my noon hour skate right here on the Rock. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Excuse me. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in just a few days with more Tales with TR. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you on the rebound.